Strategy of Wolves. UK Child Care System as Sex Abuse Network, OccultYorkshire 13. Published by OccultYorkshire, WordPress.com. Tavistock underwrites or has intimate relations with 30 research institutions in the United States, all of which at one time or another have taken a player's hand in the shaping of American schooling. John Taylor Gatto, Underground History of American Education. Is it really possible that Savile's predations of various care homes and psychiatric institutions were facilitated by Lord David Owen, Labour MP, not merely out of some sleazy tit-for-tat, but as part of a decades-long, multinational agenda, related to Owen's former boss William Sargant, and thence to MKULTRA, involving the deliberate sexual abuse of children as both a form of dark research, experimentation and a fully operational social engineering program? Dating at least as far back as Havelock Ellis and the formation of the Fabian Society? If the answer is no, is it really possible that all of this is just coincidence? If the answer is again no, what does that leave? Is there a middle ground between all a plot and just coincidence? The middle ground seems to be that dark research and social engineering have a knack for making use of groups and individuals who are genuinely attempting to bring about social reform through more humanistic methods, and who either remain oblivious, while useful, to these hidden goals, or who eventually wise up and adapt their methods, values, and goals to fit with the deeper program. In other words, who follow the money and align with the power. It's easy to imagine how this might be especially the case if they were to discover that all their efforts were being blocked by the same power structures, and that the only way to at least try to beat them would be first to join them. So here's another coincidence for the rapidly mounting pile. 1752, the Quakers in Philadelphia, USA, were the first group in America to make an organized effort to care for the mentally ill. Pennsylvania Hospital provided rooms in the basement with shackles attached to the walls, designed to house a small number of mentally ill patients. Within a couple of years, the demand was so high that another ward was opened beside the hospital. A new Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane was opened in a suburb in 1856, and continued to do business under different names until 1998. Ref. In the UK meanwhile, in 1796, the Society of Friends set up the Retreat in Yorkshire, commonly known as the York Retreat, for the treatment of people with mental health needs. It operates to this day as a charitable organization, and is known for having pioneered the humane treatment that became a model for asylums around the world. 1. Which of course it is supposed can only be a good thing. Another coincidence. The London Child Guidance Clinic was first established in Islington, North London, in 1929. Some 70 years later, an alleged ring of pedophiles, working in and through a network of care homes across the country, was discovered operating in Islington. At the time, 1993, it was Britain's biggest police inquiry into the organized sexual abuse of children. From the Sunday Times, August 1, 1993, Child Abuse Sex Ring Found, by Richard Palmer. For the past 5 months, officers from the squad have secretly liaised with directors of social services in more than half a dozen London boroughs amid fears that organized gangs have targeted vulnerable children in their areas. Several of the most prominent offenders under surveillance are wealthy businessmen. They have been linked to a sex ring abusing young people living in children's homes in the London borough of Islington. Due to the missing files, nobody can check which local authorities Islington sent children to, but some evidence remains in the form of statements from children who were in Islington's care. The website Spotlight on Abuse updated the story in 2013, making the observation that no convictions were made and that the investigation was apparently shut down, citing also the investigation into child protection expert, social care worker, and founding member of PIE, Peter Righton, which was shut down in 1994. 20 years later, in 2013, the Metropolitan Police began an investigation into claims, including ones made by Labour MP Tom Watson, that Righton was part of a pedophile network with connections to the British government. According to Spotlight on Abuse, at least one boy from the Islington care home system was taken to New Barnes School, an independent boarding school in Gloucestershire where Peter Righton was governor, and where music teacher Alan Stewart was convicted of sexually abusing girls in 1994. Despite allegations of widespread sexual abuse at the school, the Crown Prosecution Service dropped the case. After Righton's 1992 conviction, he and his partner Richard Alston, the headmaster of New Barnes School, were invited to stay at Lord Henniker's estate in Suffolk. Lord Henniker's estate was run as a children's activity centre, and Islington Council had been sending children there for years. In August 2014, the BBC described Righton's role in the UK childcare system as one of considerable assistance to the Home Office, specifically to a government report in 1970, when Righton travelled extensively carrying out research work, and went to children's homes all over the country, where he interviewed individual boys in approved schools and spoke to the heads of homes. While working to establish PI, Righton became increasingly influential in the field of residential childcare. According to Ian Pace, Righton was deeply involved with the cult of the classical world that was very important to the paedophile movement, focusing on stories of Greek love between men and young boys. As leader of Islington Council, Margaret Hodge was responsible for allowing this alleged nationwide network to continue its predations of children in the care system. Indifferent to the implications, Prime Minister Tony Blair made her children's minister in 2003, 10 years after the abuse first became public. According to the Daily Telegraph, reporting on 6 April 2014, one victim from an Islington care home alleged that Jimmy Savile taxis regularly came to the home, suggesting that children were collected there and ferried to Savile, who used his position as a celebrity to procure children. Michael Gove, the Education Secretary, has instigated investigations into 21 children's homes around the country where Savile is suspected of abusing vulnerable young people. That same day, the Telegraph ran another article, called Jimmy Savile Sex Abuse. Islington is still covering up, citing the 1995 White Report, which was a response to the Evening Standard's 112-page dossier of evidence. Parents, children and staff reiterated to White the paper's allegations, including that violent pimps openly collected children from the home, and were even allowed by staff to stay overnight in children's rooms. White, then director of Oxfordshire Social Services, confirmed that Islington allowed at least 26 workers facing extremely serious allegations to leave its employ without investigation. Staff accused of everything from rape to child prostitution had been allowed to resign, often with good references. He described Islington as a classic study in how pedophiles target children, aided by the council's naive interpretation of gay rights. Islington was deeply influenced by and had many connections to the paedophile information exchange. In the fatally naive 1970s to mid-80s, PI openly campaigned for sex to be legalized with children from age 4, and for incest and child pornography to be legalized. The National Council for Civil Liberties, now Liberty, allowed it to affiliate, and its then legal officer Harriet Harman wrote a paper effectively backing some PI demands. The assumption in those progressive days was that pedophiles simply loved children and wanted to liberate their sexuality. Harriet Harman has described Margaret Hodge as her best friend in Parliament. Hodge's late husband, Henry Hodge, was also an Islington Labour councillor, and a former chairman of the National Council for Civil Liberties. In 1985, Margaret Hodge announced that Islington Council would positively discriminate in favour of gay staff. It exempted self-declared gay men from background checks, and pedophiles pretending to be decent gay men cynically exploited this. Righton meanwhile had founded a training course for residential workers. Pedophilia, he declared in one essay, was no more bizarre than a penchant for redheads. The article quotes a whistleblower called Dr. Davies. I think there could be more than one home with Savile connections. Children from Islington's home at 114 Grosvenor Avenue were taken to Jersey by Robert, and Savile visited Jersey's Haut de la Garenne home. Survivors of abuse there have described being taken to an Islington children's home. Haut de la Garenne was visited by the Cray twins and Lord Boothby. The crimes that allegedly occurred there were considerably more severe than mere pedophilia, involving as they did the violent rape, torture, and murder of children. 2. Although it seems almost unthinkable when written down in black and white, all of these crimes appear to be sourced in roughly, or exactly, the same social circles and value set as those of my own family. There is another quite damning chain of associations to be found by looking at Sir Harold Heywood, a skilled social organizer who worked with certain, now key, celebrities during the 1960s and 70s. For almost 20 years, Sir Harold occupied one of the top positions at the National Association of Youth Clubs, NAYC, and under his directorship, from 1955 to 1974, Sir Angus Ogilvy, husband of Princess Alexandra, was appointed president. A slew of celebrity-attended fundraising events were organized, enlisting the support of Jimmy Savile, Cliff Richard, and Rolf Harris, among others, and membership swelled to 600,000. In 1973, Haywood was given an OBE for services to youth, and in 1974, NAYC organized with Albany Trust to set up a 2-day training conference on youth sexuality for people who train youth workers. Haywood's involvement with NAYC is listed as having ended in 1974, but even after his departure, Jimmy Savile stopping by was still a frequent occurrence, and he maintained close links with both NAYC and FAB, physically handicapped and able-bodied, beyond Haywood's tenure. During 1974 and 1975, Savile was holding annual fundraising events, Terrific, for NAYC, and while writing his autobiography, published in 1974, referred to himself as vice president to Angus Ogilvy's president. In 1974, Savile had also become honorary president of FAB when it became an independent charity. Savile did charity runs for them. During Haywood's time in 1970, FAB had launched a TV fundraising appeal with Cliff Richard fronting the advert. Cliff, along with Savile, Rolf Harris and Ed Stewart were to become 4 major entertainers appearing publicly for FAB fundraising. Ref. In 1975, Sir Harold became chairman of Albany Trust. Soon after, he met with 4 or 5 PI members at the Mind Sexual Minorities Workshop. Having stated that there was a moral imperative for the trust to assist pedophiles, he enlisted the aid of trust director Anthony Gray, born Anthony Edgar Gartside Wright. Gray, then Wright, had been a journalist in Leeds, Yorkshire, in the 1940s. He may even have known Savile, before joining the Fabian-affiliated Homosexual Law Reform Society in 1958. He became secretary for Albany Trust in 1962 and director from 1971 to 77. In 1992's Quest for Justice, Towards Homosexual Emancipation, 3, Gray writes, I arranged for a few private discussions to be held at the Trust's offices between psychiatrists, psychologists and social workers whom I knew to be concerned with pedophiles in their professional work, to explore with them the nature and availability of support needed. I also invited some pedophiles to join in these talks, including the young man who had spoken at the Mind Conference and other members of the newly formed, and ill-fated, Paedophile Information Exchange, PI, and another group, PAL, Paedophile Action for Liberation, 4. Albany Trust teamed up with PI to create a booklet called, Pedophilia, Some Questions and Answers. It proposed that child abusers were a social benefit and that without them voluntary services and youth welfare work would be practically impossible. According to researcher Simon Ricketts, it was, essentially, proposing pedophiles as a free source of labor for social services. In the belief that knowledge dispels prejudice, this booklet sets out to answer the commonest questions and suppositions about pedophilia, and to argue that those involved represent no special threat to society, but on the contrary are often a force for social good, emphasis added. 5. In 1977, Sir Harold Haywood was appointed director of the Queen's Silver Jubilee Trust at the Queen's behest, which went on to raise over £15 million for disadvantaged youth. He also became a director of the Prince's Trust, and in 1985, took the Prince on a plain clothes visit to London's Centrepoint Hostel and charity centres in Soho's red light district, to see the plight of young homeless people for himself. Ref. 1. Founded by William Tuke, it was originally run by and for Quakers but gradually became open to everyone. It inspired other progressive facilities such as the American Brattleboro Retreat, Hartford Retreat and Friends Hospital. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/the_retreat. 2. In February 2015, the independent journalism site Exaro alleged that Righton was involved in the sadistic murder of a boy at Lord Henniker's estate. http://www.exaronews.com/articles/5501/pedophile-lynchpin-peter-wrighton-carried-out-sadistic-murder. 3. The book includes a photograph of Alec Horsley's wartime associate, J.B. Priestley, with his wife, Jacquetta Hawkes. 4. Quest for Justice, Towards Homosexual Emancipation, by Anthony Gray, Random House, 2011, page 209. Quoted here, https://bitsofbooksblog.wordpress.com/2015/02/10/Sir Harold Haywood/ 5. The project was abandoned after Angela Willans, a trustee who was the woman's own agony aunt, saw a draft and branded it monstrous. The Albany Trust said, Albany Trust wishes to make it clear it entirely dissociates itself from any organization promoting the sexual abuse of children. Albany's counseling services continue to provide much-needed support for individuals from all backgrounds, across the spectrum of sexuality. https://ianpace.wordpress.com/2014/09/29/Anthony-Gray-and-the-sexual-law-reform-society-2/